Hi, everyone. This is Sam Silverman, Managing Partner of EB5AN. Thank you for taking time to join us on today's presentation. Today, we're going to be discussing an EB5 investment with one of our investors, Ken Garrity, who recently gifted $4.8 million in funds to support 6 EB5 investments, each $800,000 for 6 different overseas relatives into our Twin Lakes rural EB5 project. If you would like a copy of the slide deck, please reach out to us at info@eb5an.com, and we'll get started here. So a little bit about EB5AN. We're a national leading EB5 investment fund manager. We've worked with more than 2,300 EB5 investor families from more than 60 countries through various EB5 regional center offerings over the last 10 years. This is a map showing where many of our investors have come from. Most importantly here is that people from a wide variety of nationalities and backgrounds have consistently found value in our investment approach to the EB5 visa program. The vast majority of EB5 investments are made under sponsoring USCIS EB5 regional center licenses. Currently, we own and operate more than 10 EB5 regional centers authorized by USCIS that cover more than 30 states. And we've applied for the remainder of the states as well and expect to be approved in the near future. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Sam Silverman. A little bit more about my professional experience bio is there on the left side, and my partner Mike Schoenfeld is here on the right with a little bit of information about his professional experience and background as well. Now we're going to shift over to the main part of today's interview and discuss with Ken why he chose to invest with our company and selected the Twin Lakes, Georgia Rural Project. And to start, I'll introduce Ken, and I put some information about his professional experience and education on the slide here. And obviously, he has a very extensive background with investing, finance, and so I'll let him jump in and introduce himself and share a little bit about his career path and what he's been doing recently, and then we'll get into some specific questions about EB5. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, hi, Sam, and hello, everyone. Yeah, this is Ken Garrity. I'm from Queens, New York. Spent a good part of my life in New York City. I now live in Las Vegas. And I've spent 30 plus years in the corporate world, mostly in financial roles, mostly in financial services. Retired a while ago and then did some real estate development here in Las Vegas, and then eventually got involved in this EB5AN investment opportunity. The purpose or the reason I got involved in EB5 is that my wife is Filipina, and she has a large family in the Philippines. And she's been wanting for a long time to bring them here. It's difficult, as I'm sure many of you understand, to get visas to come here. We tried a number of avenues, including fiancé visa, student visa, tourist visa, and many of them didn't work for various reasons. And then we came across the EB5 investment opportunity, which, as I learned more and more about it, seemed to be a very good fit for our goals. And so we started to research, talked to a number of immigration lawyers, helped me understand better how this program works, talked to a couple of regional RCCs that were available for investment. Eventually came across Sam Silverman and his organization. Spent some time discussing the situation with him. Also talked to a few lawyers, as I said, and one of the lawyers that I was referred to was Anahita George, who's the lawyer I eventually ended up going with as our lawyer. Not only was she easy to work with and available, but she herself is sponsoring her sister to come to the United States from India through the EB5 program, and she's chosen to invest in the same project I did, the Twin Lakes Rural Project. So that gave me some comfort also that she was committed to the same project as I ultimately chose. I also spoke to another investor in the Twin Lakes project who is very enthusiastic about the investment. He had done his due diligence on the project before I did, and gave it a good review. So then after we sort of zeroed in on the Twin Lakes project and the Sam Silver organization, I went out to the Twin Lakes area, which is outside of Atlanta, Georgia, with my wife and a friend of mine who has experience in real estate development. And we spent a day there meeting with one of the investors, the managers there, and also with the vice president of Coulter Homes, who is supervising the development. And we toured the homes. We met a lot of the people who are operating the system. Asked a lot of questions about the finances and the demographics and the sales procedures, et cetera. And it all seemed to fit very well. Its project was viable and had a good chance of succeeding in the next 4 or 5 years, which is the time horizon that it's working in. So anyway, so based on all that, I decided to make the investment. As Sam noted, is 6 different investors from the Philippines were investing $100,000 in the project. And the way I chose to do it was to gift the money to the investors. I had a choice of gifting it or lending it to the investors. If I had loaned the money to the investors, I would have gotten it back, but I also would have had to pay interest on the imputed income that the loans would have generated, and the investors didn't really have an ability to pay that money, so I would have paid tax on money I would never get. Gifting it was a tax-free transaction. I had already set the money up in a trust for my wife's family, and so I effectively released the money sooner than I would have otherwise, and it worked out well in terms of providing financial resources. You mentioned, by the way, that another factor that influenced my decision to go with Twin Lakes is that Coulter Homes is an established developer, has a long track record in the Southeast. I think there's a high chance of succeeding with this project. So talking specifically about the Twin Lakes project, what I liked about it was I liked the demographics. They're marketing this to 55 plus adult community. Many of the buyers are lawyers, doctors, other affluent people who have the resources to make this investment. Typically, they're downsizing from a larger home from other parts of the country. It seemed like that would not be affected much by a recession we may be expecting. I like the rural aspect because from research I did, that's sort of favored by the USCIS and may result in a faster route to getting a visa to come here. So if that's true, that is a real plus. I like the fact that Sam has already locked in all the jobs. I saw the economist's report on the job creation, and we've already satisfied the government requirements for job creation and for investor. And so that risk has been minimized, not being able to achieve that. So anyway, so on balance, everything about Twin Lakes looks very solid, and I feel confident even today, based on everything I know, that that's going to be a success. Yeah, I would also say that Sam and his team were very easy to work with. They were responsive. They accommodate our situation, and so that also made me feel good about working with this team. That I could, I'd give myself whenever I needed help. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very pleased with the attorney we're using, Anahita. Sam had recommended her among others, and I've had a great success working with her. Extremely responsive, goes above and beyond with suggestions that I hadn't considered. And so she made it a very simple process. I could mention that the hardest part of this process is documenting the sources of the funding, which is a very tedious task. In my case, I had to go way back in history, find documents, tax returns, financial brokerage statements, employment records. A lot of data had to be produced, which Anahita, guided me through. I had to go find the documents. That took a little while, but once I had them all together, they were able to write up the whole application for each investors. Everything submitted. It took a little over a month, I would say, from start to do that. Now we've made the investment. We filed the applications with the USCIS and just waiting for a response to those. So I say I haven't changed my opinion. I think the EB5 program is probably one of the best ways to get a visa and a green card to the U.S. When you go through the documentation steps and if you get comfortable with the investment opportunity. So I would that's really where I ended up. So that kind of summarizes my view of this.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Just a couple specific follow-up questions. So I'm glad you had a great experience working with Anahita. She's worked with many of our clients, and we hear nothing but positive things. When you were interviewing, a number of attorneys, before you decided to go with her, what going in, obviously, what made you decide to go with her versus some of the other attorneys?
Yeah, I would say Anahita is extremely approachable. I dealt with other attorneys that had to go through their secretaries, and it was very formal and cumbersome. And Anahita just answered the phone. I have her cell number. She answered the phone. She always, I can call her any time of day or night. Extremely easy to reach, always willing to help. It just seemed much less formal than some of the other attorneys I was talking to. And I liked that style. I thought it would work well with me, and I think it did. So that was a big differentiator in how Anahita worked versus the other lawyers I talked to.
Got it. And so, if you were giving advice to another investor considering hiring an attorney, obviously responsiveness and approachability would be important. What else would you, advise someone, to look for in whoever they choose to hire?
Well, Anahita has told me she's done 500 of these applications and never had one denied. So that was a very comforting fact that I learned. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Anahita is sponsoring her own sister, her younger sister, who lives in India, to come here on an EB5 visa program. So she's got a personal stake in this. And Anahita has selected the Twin Lakes investment project as the vehicle for her sister. So, she's personally invested in the same project I am, which made me feel very comfortable and she has done her own due diligence on the project. So that all those factors combined made me feel very good about working with it.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, so shifting back over to the project, you mentioned you've done some real estate development yourself. I guess, for those investors who don't, have experience with real estate development, this being a real estate development project, what are some of the kind of most important things to look for, with respect to doing diligence on the developer and the project itself? What are some kind of, good signposts, early indications of success in a project that, investors can look for, that some projects, that are more developed and, have advanced more will have, versus other projects that are just renderings and, no construction started yet, would not have?
Right. So I touched on a couple of these in my discussion, but I'll go back and go into a little more depth. To my mind, the single most important factor that matters in a real estate development like this is the track record of the developer. If they have a successful track record of doing this in the past, and not just once, but multiple times, that gives me great comfort that they know what they're doing and that they're going to repeat the track record. And Coulter Homes has a long track record in the Southeast of developing residential real estate sort that Lakes represents. And so given that track record, I felt that they would be an excellent source of investment and would produce the kind of results I was looking for. So that's the number one. Number two, as I mentioned, is the demographics. The kind of people they're selling to are people who I think will be able to manage through this possible recession we're looking at, if there is one, and continue to buy homes there. I don't think the recession would disrupt that as it might other kind of real estate development in some other parts of the country. The Southeast is a prospering and growing area. People are moving there, and the doctors and lawyers who are buying into the Twin Lakes project should be able to be doing that under almost any economic scenario. So that helps. And as I say, the fact that it's in the Southeast, in Atlanta, where there is a growing population and people are moving there to the Sun Belt to retire. Also, I went there, of course. I didn't mention that, but I've been there, and I toured the whole facility. It's a very attractive facility. I have a little bit of knowledge of retirement communities. My mother lived in one for many years, and I spent a lot of time with her, and I understand how they work. And this community is among the best I've seen. I mean, it's nicer than the one my mother was in. She was in a nice one. So this is a pretty community, and I think it will attract a good clientele. So those are some of my thoughts on why this particular investment is a good one.
Got it. And some of those points you mentioned, the Southeast demographics, how would you, compare, contrast, this opportunity outside of Atlanta with, other EB5 investments, let's say that are, in the Bay Area, in Oakland, where, the demographics and, kind of trends are not as favorable?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, the Bay Area is probably a prime example of an area that's risky because people are migrating out of the Bay Area, people migrating toward Atlanta. So you've got an exodus of people, of talented people, the tech community is kind of leaving the Bay Area because housing costs are so high, and because now people can work remotely, they don't need to be in the Bay Area to work for the. I would think the Bay Area is probably one of the areas you want to avoid in terms of risk profile if you're looking for a place that's going to survive under any economic scenario.
Got it. And obviously, there, in addition to the geographic aspect of the investment, there's also the asset class itself. So, in your mind, when you're, considering projects like Twin Lakes, which are single family home, retirement communities versus others like, let's say an energy, oriented project or, infrastructure, telecommunications, or a hotel, what kind of drew you toward, the single family home kind of build sell model versus, some of the other asset classes?
Well, as you alluded earlier, I have experience in real estate development, and I'm not a huge developer, but I've done some work, and all the work I've done has been in single family home construction. I was in the more luxury end of the market here in Las Vegas, but still I was building single family homes, and I understand the dynamics and the demographics and the marketing and the time frame it takes to build and sell those. So I just felt I could relate closely to the Twin Lakes project because it approximates what I've done myself. And I met you were able to arrange for the VP of Culture to meet us at the Twin Lakes project, the guy who supervises not only the Twin Lakes project, but a number of other Culture projects in the Southeast. And he has extensive background in real estate development. And to explain to us, both his philosophy and strategy and how Culture is managing this, and it all held together and made sense to me. So I felt this big guy in charge, the track record of the developer is extensive, and so everything really added up. It just seemed like a very positive opportunity.
Got it. That's really helpful. I guess looking back, just roughly, how many different projects were you kind of initially considering and evaluating before you decided to go with the Twin Lakes project, and how easy was it to find other comparably advanced rural projects like Twin Lakes?
Well, it wasn't easy to find there. As far as I know, there weren't that many. Maybe I missed some, but I didn't find too many. I did discuss other projects and do some research, but in on Twin Lakes because, as I said, I liked the track record of the developer, Coulter Homes. I thought that to me, that's the number one priority, is having a developer with a extensive and successful track record, and they had it. And I said, all the things that I like: the demographics, I like the geographic location. I did look at a few other projects, but I didn't spend a lot of time in them because each of them had a drawback or two that didn't appeal to me. And so once I zeroed them out and decided they weren't the right one, and I came across the Twin Lakes, I spent a lot of time looking at it, and couldn't find any reason not to invest in it. I mean, everything added up correctly, so it's a good investment as far as I'm concerned.
Got it. And what, just so some of our listeners understand, what in your mind, what were some of the drawbacks of some of the other projects that kind of made you think, oh, maybe this isn't for me? And also, obviously interest rates are going up, so maybe touch on kind of the importance of financing and how that plays into a project in today's market.
It's for the same reasons we sort of already touched on, but I mean, so it's some of them were in geographies I didn't think was an attractive location, like the Bay Area, for example. Others, the developer did not have the kind of track record that Coulter has. They would just either they were unknown, I mean, they hadn't even heard of them, or they just were not in business that long. Whereas Coulter's been in business a long time and has a very successful record. So the key points I was looking for would be demographics, geography, and track record. They struck out on one or more of those points as I looked, and that checked all the boxes, in my opinion. So that's why I didn't go with the others, and why I ended up going with Coulter.
So shifting to the second part of that question, obviously you've had a lot of experience in finance. So
yes,
it would be really helpful if you could kind of give us some basic guidelines about real estate developers and the impact of rising interest costs, and potentially for a project that, let's say, doesn't have a loan today, how likely are they going to be able to get one in today's market? And how do rising interest rates kind of affect projects like this versus a project like a hotel or an apartment building, for example, that's not yet done?
Well, obviously, rising interest rates are not a positive sign for real estate development. Real estate likes to have fixed and low cost financing. And so I would think that, it's going to be hard for some projects that don't have their financing lined up in today's environment to complete that. And I'd say that's a risk factor that I would, if I was going into an EB5 investment. Now, in Coulter's case, again, because of their substantial size, they should have an easier time arranging financing, and they also have the ability, in my opinion, to raise prices in their development if necessary to compensate for higher interest rates, because the demographic they're selling to is somewhat immune to interest rates and to recession. The people who they're selling to are generally selling a home somewhere else in the country and downsizing and using the money from the sale of that home to buy their home. I think half the sales or so at Twin Lakes are all cash. So buyers don't need to take out a mortgage, or many of them are not taking out mortgages. So rising interest rates don't directly affect them. And as I say, they have the ability to pay a little more if Coulter has to raise prices to compensate for any financial surprises that may come along. So I think they have a resilient clientele that they're selling to, and I'm less concerned that it will be adversely affected by rising interest rates.
Got it. And one of the things you mentioned there, the possibility of a recession, right? There's some people who think we're definitely heading into a recession. Others think maybe not. It's just going to be a little dip, and then things are going to kind of continue upward. No one will know until we look back on this years into the future. But in your mind, if there was a recession coming, that would just result in less homes being bought or just less economic activity, in general that happens with a recession. How do you think this project, just given that they're building, and selling individual homes one by one, how does a project like Twin Lakes kind of, how is it positioned to better weather a recession versus, let's say a hotel, that's going to open in 12 months?
Yeah, I actually gave a lot of thought to that question because I don't know if there's going to be a recession or not. I think there's a pretty good chance there will be, but there may not be. But I mean, I have to be prepared that there will be. I mean, not just in my Twin Lakes decision, in all my investing, I worry about what will a recession do. And I think if a recession occurs, it probably will have some effect on Twin Lakes, partly because the people who are buying the homes may have a harder time selling their primary home somewhere else in the country right now. So that could delay their ability to move to Twin Lakes, and that could slow down sales. So that could lengthen the time it takes to complete this project. But again, I think that Coulter, given their size and history, has the ability to withstand that. I mean, if the project slowed down, I believe Coulter could manage their way through that fairly successfully, lower their profits a little bit and take longer to close out the project, but I do think they could get through it. So again, that was a factor. I thought about recession. I think it is a risk. It's probably the biggest, I would say, that Twin Lakes faces, but it's no bigger a risk than any other project we face. But I do believe Coulter will be able to survive if that happens.
Got it. That makes sense. And I guess to kind of wrap up here, having just gone through this process, doing the research on the projects, working with the immigration attorney, over the last few months, what general kind of main pieces of advice would you have for other investors, in a similar situation who are considering, making an investment in an EB5 project in today's economic landscape, let's say, with the goal obviously of securing the immigration benefit, getting the green card, creating the jobs, but at the same time safeguarding their capital and having kind of a timely expected return of those funds?
I guess I'd say the biggest surprise to me, and I had heard this, so it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it is how much documentation you need. Our application consisted of almost 4,000 pages per investor of documents, mostly consisting of tax returns, brokerage statements, employment records, genealogy like birth certificates, marriage certificates, etc. An awful lot of documentation had to be used. That just takes time. I mean, going back and digging all that up is not easy. And then you've got to reconcile. Anita has questions. She looks at it and says, well, I don't understand how this happened or that happened. And I have to go explain it and further document it. So that's a burden on me, not on the 6 investors. Now, if the investor and the applicant are the same, or the funder, are the same, then that person will have that burden. In my case, it fell on me, not so much on the individual family members who were applying. Right. And it took a lot of time to get that together. So I was not unaware of that. I was warned it's going to take a lot of time, and I can confirm it does take a lot of time. Anita is very meticulous. She makes sure that she can explain every single document, every single transfer. She can trace the history of the funds from, in my case, the started back in 2008. So that's 15 years or so. I had to go back to document everything, and Anita, made sure everything held together. And so anyway, that's the biggest single issue I would say comes up. Now, the other point I'd make is there's a lot, now that we've done the application, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to when we're going to hear back. Nobody seems to really know how long this process takes. I mean, there's no guidelines. And rural projects are supposed to be given an advantage over other projects, and so maybe we'll hear sooner, but we really don't know. So it's hard for me to plan for when the investors can come here. For instance, about issues like housing. I'm trying to work on housing for them, but I have no idea when they're coming. So kind of that. So that's a little bit of an unfortunate situation. But that's. I mean, I'm not surprised. We work with the U.S. government. There's not a lot of certainty how fast they'll respond. So we're just waiting right now to see what happens next.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Ken. That's really helpful, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience. We really think that the more information and different opinions and just independent research that investors have access to will just result in better decisions being made. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and reasoning on why you decided to go with the Twin Lakes Rural Project.